on this type of cushion, I'm going to transfer all the measurements that I have for the cushion onto patterning fabric. So I've got some laid out on the bench now, so and my measurements here, so I'm going to just transfer them over now. Just going to draw a line in, so that's my starting point. So I'm going to square one end off. So the size of the cushion, it's 55 inches by 23 inches. 55 inches. 23. So this cushion is going to have radius corners. Perfect. I'm just using a pot, it's just round. You can use whatever you want, as long as it's round. So there we have it, our radius corners. So this is going to have a panel inside, so the cushion is going to be like that shape with a panel inside that's going to have diamond stitches. So again, I'm going to radius the actual centre panel, but I don't want it as big as the radius on the actual corners of the cushion. So I'm going to use just a tin, a spray glue tin. As you can see, it's smaller than that. So we need to put some match marks on these radiused corners here. So one in the centre of each one where the radius meets the line, and one on the other side as well. So it's 3 match marks there. Do the same on the opposite side. And 3 match marks here. I want to put another one here, same on the opposite side, and then a couple in the middle. One here and one here. So that's the match marks on there. I can now cut this cushion out. If you see from these measurements, the actual backrest is the same width. It's exactly the same width as the base cushion, but it's only 12.5 inches high. So the one pattern will do both the seat and the backrest. So this, from this dashed in line here, is the backrest. It's not very high. I think now I'm looking at it, I'm going to change the size of this to 5 inches rather than 6 to 5, just to give myself a little bit more on here than here. So I should have 1.5 inches, 6.5, and I should have 6 here. So if I give myself 5 here, then I've got 7.5 there. So it's just a little bit better. It's always nice to put things onto plastic, draw out the actual size that you're going to make it. Then you can actually get a proper idea of what it will look like. Because this, to me, looks a little bit shallow. This distance. So I've now redrawn the pattern. I've got rid of the line that I put in first, just so there's no confusion about which line is which. Now what I need to do, I need to punch some holes where the match marks are, here. Put some information on the pattern, and then I can start cutting it out. So now I need to put some information on the pattern. So the first one is the thickness of the foam, so it's 4-inch foam. I need to measure the size of the exterior of the cushion, so then I know how big to cut the pieces for the borders. So I'll fold the pattern in half. 104 inches. This is obviously 55, so I'll do it at 57 inches. And this is 10, 11 inches. So we take 20 inches off that measurement for this border. That gives me 20 inches off that is 84, so it's 84 inches. So that, yeah, it's both by 4-inch cushion, so it's 2 seam allowances, so 2 seam allowances would be 3/4 of an inch, but because it's vinyl I'm gonna take out a little bit off that, so the border will be 4, so 4 and 3/8. That just makes it a little bit tighter. With vinyl you want to make everything a little bit smaller because vinyl has quite a lot of stretch in it, so if you make it exactly the right size, when the cover goes onto the foam, you'll have a baggy cushion. You have to allow for the stretch in the vinyl itself, and the compression of the foam. When I sew this, I'll end up with the border being 3 5/8 deep on a 4-inch foam, so that'll give you a slightly rounder looking edge to the foam rather than it being flat and square. So that's all I need on there, so I'm going to get the fabric out now and start cutting the fabric out. As always, I'm going to write on the back of the fabric, not on the good side. If I make a mistake on the back, it's absolutely fine. If I make a mistake on the front, then I have to deal with trying to remove it. Now if I'm using a biro, then that's impossible. So always do any marking on the reverse side of the fabric, no matter what you're doing. Just very good practice. So I'm going to use pencil to draw on this. When I attach the pattern to the fabric itself, I'm going to flip it over because the vinyl is upside down, so the pattern's got to be upside down as well. Remember the holes that I put in? These are so I don't have to split the pattern, so I can draw in where these lines are without cutting the pattern up. So the match marks over, so these are also match marks. They need to be transferred over. Same here. So now I need to do the centre part. This part is going to have diamond stitching. So it's a similar process to doing the other parts. It's just using the pattern. So I'm going to draw the match marks in first. So I'll check the pattern for the size of the border. The border's 4 3/8. I'm going to cut it out at 4 3/8. 4 3/8. So I'm going to cut out these pieces now, roll the fabric along the bench so I can cut out the rest. The 2 pieces now that are the centre panels that are going to be stitched, they need to be foam backed, but first I need to actually snip the match marks in. If I don't snip them in now, once I put the foam on, we'll not see them. Once I've foam backed them, I need to draw on the diamond patterns. That's quite a boring process, but I'll explain that and the difference between a diamond and a square, which a lot of people don't realise. A diamond isn't just a square tilted over at 45 degrees, it's a different shape altogether. So this is scrim foam. It's just a thin foam with a scrim on the back of it. Now scrim is just a generic term for a very open woven fabric. It just gives it strength. So I've now got the two panels foam backed. I need to now draw the diamonds on the fabric. I'm doing diamonds and not squares. A lot of people will do a square, and because it's on its end so that it's like that, pointed, they think it's a diamond. A square is a four-sided shape with 4 equal length sides and 90-degree corners, or 90-degree angles. A diamond isn't. It's got 4 equal sides, but it hasn't got 4 equal angles. Only the 2 opposing angles are equal. So the first job is to find centre. I'll just double check it. This is the centre line that I'm going to be working from. I'll put this to one side for now and just work on the other one. 12 inches down and then 6 inches across. I draw a line from this mark to that mark. Do the same from that mark to that mark. And I can now just continue to use this ruler as a guide. So I'll do just a couple here just to show you that you do get diamonds and you don't get squares. So these are diamonds, they're not squares. So I'll continue with this. I'll do this one and do the other one, and once I've drawn all the lines I'll need to sew. I'll let you listen to some music while I do all this, because it's pretty boring. So I'm now ready to sew the diamonds onto the fabric, but before I do that I'm going to do a test piece. So I just want to make sure that the tension is fine on the machine and the stitches are the right size. I knew there was a bit of an issue. I have a little bit of problem with the thread here, so you can see why it's important to do a test. I could quite easily just sewn straight onto the fabric that I was going to use, and it was all wrong. So there we go, that should be fine. I'm going to start at one end. going to go all the way down. I'm just going to sew this little bit, and then I can start to fold it where the stitch line is. So I'm just using these little squares just so I don't have long tails of thread. And if you've ever done any sewing before, sometimes you get a bit of a bunch up of thread when you first start, but having it already sewn onto a bit of fabric here will stop that happening. Always back tack on the end. The last thing I want is for this seam to come undone. So now that I've got a line of stitching in, I can just fold where that stitch line is, and I'm not creating creases in the fabric. So as you can see, it's quite a time-consuming job, but the good thing about a diamond stitch is it's quite forgiving. Because it's kind of an optical illusion. If I was sewing parallel straight lines, you would see them come in and out if they weren't straight. With a diamond stitch, it's very hard to see that. So I'm going to speed this process up for your benefit. And give you a little bit of music as well to listen to, and I'll speak to you again when all this is done. So I'm now ready to sew these two pieces together. So I've got the centre panel all stitched with the diamond stitching, and the outer piece, which will go something like that. So because this piece here has been diamond stitched, it kind of shrinks the fabric a little bit, just the nature of stitching things. So I have to just give it a little bit of a stretch as I'm sewing it together. So make sure the match marks line up. I'll have to snip this little bit here. So put a couple of little snips in it. Now this is quite tricky because I've got two curves that are going the opposite direction. It's not the easiest thing in the world to sew. So around these corners is going to be a little bit tricky. So I'm just going very slowly and kind of just do a stitch at a time, get around these edges, around these corners. So that's the first corner done. So just check where the match marks are. Just checking the match marks. So they line up really well. It's inevitable that you will create creases on something like this, but steaming it will sort that out. So now that's one done, I've just got to do the other one. So now I need to sew the border on. So I'm going to need a square and a pencil. I'll show you why in a minute. Transfer the match mark on here to the border, and I need to transfer that over to the other side. Because when I make the base cloth, I'm going to put the same match marks on the base cloth, so that will marry up with the match mark on the base cloth, and everything will be in its correct position. So I need to do the same thing with the other cushion, the backrest cushion, and then I'm going to top stitch this seam here. Just a single top stitch on the border side, not on the top, on the edge that goes upwards rather than the top edge. Always leave the needle in when you're top stitching, just so you don't move the fabric away and then you end up with a wobbly bit of stitching. I'm just putting a little bit of tension on this, just so the seam is even. If I don't, then chances are it may roll like that, and then I'll end up with an uneven seam. So now that that's done, I need to put the back border on, so the border that runs along this edge. That's not going to be top stitched because it's never going to be seen. It goes against a bulkhead, board, whatever, and the backrest cushion is going to sit on top of here anyway. So from 4 inches out, all this is going to be covered by the backrest. When I start this seam here, I'm not going to start on the very end, I'm going to start at seam allowance in. So around about there. I don't want to sew on the end. I'll show you why when I put this onto the base cloth. I'll show you why I do it. So I'm going to leave the needle in there, snip just here, and then turn this around. When I get to this seam here, I'm going to make sure it's facing outwards that way, and the same when I get to the other side, it's facing the same direction, so outwards. I'm going to trim off the excess, so I know that's my finish point for this border. So screw it off, trim it off. Leave the needle in, snip here, back on the other side, and then turn this 90 degrees. Take off these corners. So I just need to do the same with the backrest. So I've now made the covers, the top part of the cover, and I need to do the base. So the base is cut out of a breathable base cloth, and I'm going to sew a zip into it. But unlike a lot of cushions where the zip is down one of the long edges, normally the back edge of the cushion, this is going to be a horseshoe zip. It makes life much easier when stuffing a cushion to have a horseshoe zip in. It's probably easy to sew as well, but you can't do this with every kind of cloth because I'll show you when I get round to it. It's easier that way. So I'm going to pin the pattern to the bench. Now the pattern is facing the right way up now. Unlike with the top part of the cushion, where the pattern was facing upside down on top of the fabric, because of the base, this is the wrong side of the base cloth, and the good side is facing down onto the bench. So we now put the pattern the right way up onto the bench, or onto the base cloth. I'm just going to draw around it. So that's the actual one for the base cushion drawn out. I need to now draw the line where the zip's going to go. I'm going to sew a piece of vinyl to this base cloth along this leading edge, just so the base cloth isn't seen when the cushion is made. I know that the piece that I'm going to sew is 2 inches. I'm going to add an inch of velcro, so that's 3 inches. So the zip can't come any further than this line here. I'm just going to draw it in, and then I'm going to put a curve in. So this is why it's called a horseshoe zip, because it's not really a horseshoe shape, but it's the kind of generic term. So that's where the zip's going to get sewn to. So I need to do the same with the backrest, and then I'll sew all the bits on, and we can sew it together. So I now need to attach the fabric, which is just a strip of the vinyl. So I'm going to use some seaming tape, just a double-sided tape. It's thin. This is going on the right side, so the good side of the fabric. I like to use seaming tape. It just holds things down while they're being sewn. So you can put a few different pieces together and sew them with one seam, rather than actually sewing one thing on then sewing another thing on top of it. You can do everything at the same time. And then I'm going to put Velcro along the edge. This is self-adhesive Velcro. I'm just going to overlap the fabric, or the vinyl, just so I sew through the Velcro and the vinyl at the same time. I'm going to just trim off from underneath now. So that's the backrest done. I need to machine that together, and I'll do the base cushion one, so exactly the same way. So I'm turning right on the very edge of the Velcro to make sure I get through the actual Velcro and the vinyl at the same time. So now the other side of the Velcro. So now I need to sew the zip, so I'm going to flip it over and you can see the line that I've drawn on here. This is continuous zip. It's continuous, it comes on rolls. This is 100-meter rolls, but you can get 200-meter rolls. The line is where the teeth go. So I've already got a slider attached to this one. I wouldn't normally, but I have. Start the zip off. Now I'm sewing with the foot up to the edge of the teeth. I'm not using a zipper foot for this. I'm just using the standard foot. I'll leave the needle in, slide the slider back, and continue. Now that it comes to the curve, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold this in my left hand and try and hold the zip straight, so as if it's coming from my chest there. And I'm going to move the fabric with my left hand and keep the zip straight. But I want to put a bit of tension on the zip as I do it to get round the corner. Now the line is just a guide, it's not exact. So moving the fabric with my left hand, keeping the zip straight. There we go, onto the straight bit now. So the same again with this end. So fabric in the left hand, zip in the right, and easing the fabric around, keeping the zip straight. So that's the outside of the zip sewn. That's the longest bit. So now I need to get rid of this, put this right in the centre. So normally I would actually not put a slider on while I'm sewing the zip on. I'd put it on now at this point. So I'd open the teeth up, put the slider on, slide it to where it is now, and then start to sew the inside edge. So up to this point we're absolutely fine. Where the curve starts, what I need to do is flatten the zip down, and it's going to create little pleats. So I'm just going to push the zip fabric towards the needle. It's just going to put little pleats in. As long as I keep the zip flat where the teeth are, it'll be fine. Same again on this curve. I need to now flip it over. As you can see, I've got a tram line of stitching, so I need to cut that open now from this point. So I've snipped a little hole in. I'm just going to cut between the lines. Now this fabric doesn't actually fray when it's cut. If it did fray, I wouldn't be doing the zip like this. I'm not snipping all the way to the end, because when the cushion's made and it's zipped up, I'm going to push the slider into here, so it's underneath this, so it's like a pocket for the slider. So same again on this one. So that's how you sew a horseshoe zip. So when I come to stuff the cushion, you'll actually understand why I put the zip in like this. If you've ever tried to stuff a cushion that has just a straight zip in one end of the cushion, and it's a reasonably big cushion, or even a small cushion, you'll see that it's quite difficult to get the cushion through that gap. Whereas the whole of this flaps down, and you only have to get it into the corners, and then it'll sort itself out. And you can get your hand in and adjust the foam and make sure the cushion is sitting right. All the seams are turned the right way. It's just much easier to do and quicker. So now I just need to sew the tops onto the bases. I'll change the thread again to grey and then sew those. It's to be the right way facing down, so right sides together on both. So remember when I sewed these two together that I didn't go all the way to the end? That's because I can then open the seam properly. So line the seam up, corner to corner, needle in, double check it. There we go. So now you just need to sew this together now. So to that first match mark there on the corner, put a few snips in. There we go, match mark lines up perfectly. Few more snips there. Move the needle in, as always. And find that match mark as well there. Match marks together. Mark lines up perfectly. Make sure the corners line up. Perfect. Just sew into this actual stitch line, not over it. So along this long edge, I've got no match marks because it's a straight line. And as long as I can actually hold both ends of the fabric, so I know I've got corner to corner, that then will be a nice even pull all the way along. I can turn that now. So if I'd have sewn this seam all the way to the end, I would have had to have snipped it at this point. So there's no point in sewing it if you have to snip it. So you might as well just stop where you would snip. I'm just going to go a little bit there, leave the needle in, and then I'm going to pull this back so I know that it fits. There we go. So I'm going to hold it roughly in the centre there, and I can just sew to that point now. Again. So now that I've got the covers made, I need to cut the foam. So I'll use the pattern again. So like with the fabric, I'm going to add an allowance to the foam. That's called a foam allowance. Because foam will compress under the cover, it needs to be bigger than the actual cushion that you're making. Pin the pattern to the foam. I'll just pin the corners out. I'm going to draw around the pattern, adding a foam allowance to the pattern. So I'm going to cut on the outside of the line just to give it a little bit extra foam allowance. I'm going to use a foam saw. This is a Bosch foam saw. It's not something everyone's going to own because they're not cheap. You can cut foam with an electric carving knife. That's one of the better things to cut foam with. Also, you can use a jigsaw with a special soft materials blade. I think I've got one knocking about. That's a soft materials jigsaw blade. Bit there. But it doesn't have teeth like a normal jigsaw blade does. It has a wavy, very sharp edge. So yeah, don't get your fingers in the way of that, it will hurt. Foam saw's just got two blades that run side by side against each other in a guide. It's also got a foot on it, so it stands up straight. So as you can see, so I'll just cut this out now. Now cut out, it gives a nice straight edge. So I'll just stuff this cushion now. Oh, I've got the cover on the bench and I'm just going to place the foam on top of it. So there we go, on top. So I need to do the corners first, so I'll do this corner on this side first, then the other corner. got one end in, not in properly, but it's in enough to for now. So when it comes to this last corner, I'm going to grab the corner, fold it over in half, and then tuck it in. So as you can see, I can get to all four corners quite easily. The corners are the important bit. Once you've got the corners in, they're actually sitting where they should be in the cover. Flip it over just to check. It needs adjusting. So it's just a case of getting the foam in the right place. So in all the seams, so they're all facing exactly the same way. Spin it around and then start to zip it up. It may need unzipping and then readjusting, but this is just a quick test to see how well it fits. I'm just pushing and pulling and easing it in. Don't want to put too much strain on the zip. The last thing I want to do now is to bust the zip. Gone through all this trouble to make the cover.